Hey everybody, today I'm going to be reacting to iamLucid and his video on God's existence. I actually watched it a few days ago, but I sort of was thinking about it for a while and I figured I will record this message so maybe he's going to see it as well. And this is coming from a Muslim perspective. I converted to Islam earlier this year, so this is why I'm making this video as well. Let's get into it and let's see what he has to say about God.
I believe that there's a higher power above all human beings that have created us and fashioned us so perfectly. And I genuinely believe that exists is somehow going to get somebody on the other side of this screen, maybe even across the world, really triggered, upset, and so mad to the point where they might unsubscribe, and that's okay.
So the first thing he said is like, I believe in God, the higher power, and so in Islam this is called fitra, and it's your innate predisposition to believe in God. And you can actually look up a few scientific tests they've done on the kids in the University of Oxford, where they took the kids and they didn't tell them nothing about God, but they naturally developed an understanding that there must be something greater than themselves when they were kids without indoctrinating them in any religion. This is a natural instinct and every human being has it.
Now, I've been on a mental roller coaster for these last 3 or 4 years trying to figure out why I was put here on earth, why all human beings even exist. I look at myself in my temporary body and I think, what's the point? Why am I here? What's the answer? And over years of thinking, I went through routes of atheism. I went through routes of believing that I'm stardust trying to explore itself, which still does kind of make sense in a sense, but
that stardust thing, I used to think that as well, where I watched Neil deGrasse Tyson videos and he explained like how stars were formed and that you are actually created. The particles who were creating the first stars are actually in you, and I was like amazed, like I'm stardust, but it doesn't lead anywhere, right?
Then the Big Bang Theory, and then looking into different religions, and I never really understood what the point of it was. I never understood where we came from. What's the source? What's the absolute beginning? Because if I pull out a book and I show you this book was written by author A, and then you can tell that this book was written by a human being, right? Because there was a form of intelligence that was written down on this piece of paper, and you can tell that another human being wrote this. And then if I give you a sample of DNA, and you see all of the amazing, wondrous things that happen inside of our own bodies that we can't even fully comprehend, that it takes years and years of schooling to kind of even get a grasp at. We look at all of the mechanisms in our body that help fight diseases, that help fight cancer, and we think that there was no intelligence that made us. We can play a video game on our computer and say, yeah, a team wrote the code for the game and I'm just playing the game. Yeah, like a human being wrote that. But we look at our body and we don't say who wrote the code for us.
That's a good reflection, man. Like really just reflecting on your own creation, and especially the DNA example. Like when you look at the DNA sample, it has coded instructions inside of it. Like why wouldn't it be random if there's no sort of intelligence behind it? Why would it be specific to every human being and at the same time very diverse? But it is not chaotic. The DNA is always in a specific form, reflecting on the creation outside, so on the universe where we came from, Big Bang Theory, and on your own self is actually the way you get to the truth. Somebody must have created this phone, this thing, plastic, everything, molecules, atoms were put together, then somebody took them, created plastic, somebody from there created a phone, blah, 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 blah. However, we know this phone didn't emerge from nothing. Same with your body, like it didn't come from nothing, because from nothing, nothing comes. It must have come from something, because that's the law of causality. So the same with your body, like if you go forever into an infinite regress where you say, well, where did the molecule come from? Where did my atoms come from? You can never reach a beginning point. And think about it, like if you can never reach a beginning, then that means this moment would never occur. But since you live here and you know this moment occurs, plus you actually know the universe had a beginning, we can tell like something had a beginning, so it's not forever, it's not infinite. Therefore, something must have caused it, and cause and effect applies within the universe and outside of the universe, because it is a first principle. It's not that it wouldn't apply outside of the universe.
There's so much going on inside of our own body. Looking into a mirror, you can find the answer right there. You don't even have to go look anywhere else. Looking at yourself in the mirror, that's all the answer that you need. That's all the proof that you need.
That's the thing, like when the Quran says, like when they ask you for proofs, just Look at the creation, look at the sky, look at the birds, look at your own body. Those are the signs for the people of knowledge. What's the proof of God? Your existence. You exist. Tell me how you came to be. That's the more, I don't know how to even give you more evidence, because your existence, life, is unnatural. How did life happen? What is life? And then your existence, and then even everything else in creation. Yeah, so the signs are all around you. Actually, like, the whole world is a big sign, and you just need to, like, open your eyes and just look, like, okay, I have these fingers. I didn't pick these. I didn't came to this body. I was at one point dead. I didn't exist. Now I live, but how? Why?
And I realized that I was looking for all of these answers, all these things external in this world, when I just had to look in the mirror, and I found the exact masterpiece that God created. And we all could as well. And that's what made the most sense to me. When somebody says, can God create a rock so heavy that he himself cannot lift? I love the question.
It's the same question as asking if there can be a married bachelor, or if there can be a green alien and not a alien at the same time on Mars. It's a paradox. The question itself, it doesn't make sense.
Because it really stumped me for a long time. Can God create a rock so heavy that he himself can't lift because it's so heavy? The question itself is flawed, because you're asking the question as if God's a human being, as if God's immortal, as if God has a weight limit. The question itself isn't applied to a God. If God couldn't lift anything, then he wouldn't be God, right? But if God can't create anything, then he wouldn't be God. So the question itself does not make sense if we're speaking about the source, the creator. You're asking this question as if God is bound by sleep and time and is mortal and has to work out at the gym to lift the heavier rock. You're asking this question, you're asking an infinite being, if you will, a finite question, which makes zero sense.
And it's a good observation of God. I'm glad that you didn't jump into worshiping idols or thinking that God is a man. Obviously, God has no limit. So, in a sense, we can only guess his attributes through what you just described. Like, he doesn't have the human limitations, like you have to go to sleep, you have to eat. And this is how you can, by process of elimination, you can look at religions actually and figure out which one is claiming that God is this limited being and which one is claiming it's not like that, it's transcendent. So
then I asked the question to myself over and over again, but where is God? Like, what? I'm a human being. What is my relationship to the source, to the creator? How does that make any sense? And I thought, maybe God's here. Well, no, God can't just be only here, because if you can point at God, then he's probably not God, right? Like if God's a certain piece of mass, or God's like right here, then why isn't God over there? So then he's limited. So that's not true. But then if God is everything, which I thought for a long time, multiple years, but that still means that I can point at God, which is already an understatement to what it is. Because if I can point at God and I'm this 3D temporary living object, then that can't be right, because that's an understatement to something that is totally infinite. So these questions that I was asking this entire time, they were all flawed questions. God isn't comprehensible by our temporary mind. He's not conceivable. You can't point at him. You can't look at him. He's not a certain piece of mass. That's not how it works. And after years and years of thinking about this question, of spinning around in my own mind, I eventually came to the conclusion that there is a God. There's no way that we're living in this temporary body this entire time for no reason. There's no way that the sun is the exact distance from the earth and it hasn't burned up the earth yet and it hasn't froze it off because it's too far away. Like, there's no way that all of these things, everywhere from the ant kingdom to the human kingdom, that everything is working in perfect balance and order.
So I really like that you came to this conclusion, and really at this stage it's very simple for you, because I was at this stage maybe a year and a half ago where I realized like there must have been God. Like, it's impossible not for a God to not exist. And at that stage I was then looking up different religions. What I would advise you to do at this point is to really pick up different religions and look at the concept of God only in them. So look at the Trinity concept in Christianity, look at Judaism, and look at Islam, and look at Hinduism, and look at Buddhism, and look at all these religions. I definitely believe you need to study all of them, at least look at them, so that you know you're making the right choice. But from my humble experience, the only religion which describes God even more perfectly than what you just described him is Islam, and that's because of the concept of Tawheed, of the oneness of Allah, the oneness of God. And all these attributes are within the Tawheed. And so I would really recommend you, if you are really at this stage already, to look up just Tawheed. And I think this will really blow your mind away, because when I was thinking about God and when I looked at Tawheed, it was even more perfect than what God's attributes I thought should be. So you can never compare this with Christianity, with other religions, because all the other religions then, twist and, they say like, okay, God had a son, or God, there's multiple gods, and then there's this one supreme God. And, there's so many contradictions within these things that like the whole theological concept is flawed, at least in my opinion. And that's why when I looked at Islam, it was like very clear, like, okay, this is God, and then the message is pretty simple: believe in one God, okay. And then it explains Christianity, Judaism, and everything else perfectly. Plus, the Quran itself hasn't changed from its original. There's carbon dated versions of Quran going back 1,400 years ago. So all of these things then convinced me that Islam is the truth. Of course, then many other things, but these are just the basics, right? And no other religion has this. They're just the basics, right? And no other religion has this. So that's my recommendation.
And then people ask the question, so if God's good, then why is there evil in this world? Why is there bad stuff like death and bad people? Well, you have to understand, God created evil, because if there was no evil, then there would be no good. The law of polarity states that there has to be an opposite for everything, especially for us to understand and comprehend it. If there was no nighttime, there would be no daytime. If there was no white, there would be no black. If there was no blue, there would be no red. If there was no tall, there would be no short. So if everything was good, there would be no good. Good wouldn't exist, because what can you compare it to? That's how we experience. That's how we're tested as human beings, whether you believe that this life is a test or not. It's because we have the option of the same spectrum to choose up, down, left, or right. And if we didn't have the choice, what's the point?
So God is not causing the evil to exist, and we have to really understand this in relationship to the afterlife. Because whatever suffering you're going through in this dunya, in this life, you'll forever not forget about it, but will be nothing compared to the afterlife, according to the Quran, according to just one drop of paradise, and you'll forget about your suffering in this world. So you have to look at this in relationship there with the afterlife, and knowing that it is eternal and this existence is temporary. So whatever suffering you experience here, it is worth it, even if you have the worst life available. Free choice is essential in Islam. It's essential in your life, because you actually choose your afterlife with your decisions. So you choose if you want to watch porn or you don't want to watch porn. And it's your choice. It's your choice. And in Quran it says, we did not harm you at all. You did this to yourself. So it's all your choice. So you have freedom of choice. And of course, that's the point. You're building out your afterlife in this world.
That's the kind of thinking that I've came to over the last 4 years of definitely going back and forth with myself in my own head about God's existence. Me posting this video itself is going to rile some people up, and this does not give anybody the okay to go fight about religious debates in the comments. That's not why we're here. I'm just explaining why I believe that there is a source.
I watched a few of your videos, and it looks like you are really into the self-improvement sort of lifestyle and NoFap and all those great things. And all those things are awesome, because I know many people, like one of my friends, Angel, he's also a YouTuber actually. He did a bunch of NoFap videos. He's now a Muslim. And there's many people like that who started out with self-improvement, and me as well. I lost 25 kilograms. I stopped drinking, I stopped watching porn, I stopped doing all those things before my reversion, not conversion, to Islam. But those things led me to an understanding, like, why am I even self-improving? For what? What is the purpose? And then once I realized there's a God, just like you did realize that there's a God, I just needed to find out, well, what does he has a will? Is he communicating with people? What's the deal with the prophets? Why is there evil? Uh, what's the concept of afterlife? Do people go to hell who didn't believe in this particular religion? After a while, I came to conclusion that the only option for me is Islam, because yes, there's a bunch of negative stereotypes online about it, and there's a bunch of bad Muslims in the world. That's true. Islam has been hijacked for many centuries and many decades now for political purpose, for political gains. But if you look at the original Islam, the original concept, if you read about the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and if you read about the Tawheed and the basics of the faith, it's the most logical faith there is. There's no contradiction between science and Islam. It definitely talks about why evil exists, what's the afterlife, how to live your life, and how to build a relationship with God. Because now that you know that there's a God, it makes sense that you want to build relationship with God. But how do you do that? How do you build a relationship with God? Well, you need some sort of manual. You need some sort of guideline. Because what I did, I actually thought Islam is true, and then I said, nah, I'm just gonna do my own thing. And for 8 months, I kind of invented my own religion, and I used to pray in my own way and just kind of like do my own thing. But it led me astray. It led me to really dark places again. So then I came back and I finally converted to Islam, because actually you need the guidelines. You need the 5 daily prayers, you need the fasting, you need to give charity, you need to get married, you need all these things to have a relationship with God. Otherwise, it will be very difficult, maybe possible, to have some sort of experience, but to really be God conscious, which is called taqwa, to really have taqwa of Allah in all the, let's say, situations in your life, you need to build it through worship, through sort of, by worship I don't mean like you're all day on your floor worshiping God, but like just being present, thinking about Allah, thinking about everything in existence, and just doing your 5 daily prayers. These all things are there on purpose. These all things are bringing you closer to Allah. Fasting during Ramadan, traveling to Muslim countries, that's my hobby now. But anyways, this is just an advice. I think you are very close to converting to Islam, because at this stage, I mean, there's not much to hold you back, and none of the other religions will make sense to you, because how you describe God is exactly how Allah is described in the Quran. So you just need to make that click, and then get rid of all the biases against Islam. Maybe you have some experience with it, maybe I don't know what happened in your personal life, but definitely look up the 5 principles of faith, the basics of Islam, what do Muslims believe in, and then of course you come across these bigger topics, political issues, issues regarding marriage and stuff like that, but leave that alone and just study the basics. Study who Allah is, what are his attributes, where did the universe come from, what are the 7 heavens in Islam, what is the concept of Jannah, of the afterlife, of the paradise, and Jahannam, what's the day of judgment, how's that going to be like, why is there free will, is there a predetermination as well. All these things are there, so hopefully you'll have some time to check it out, and your fitra, your innate predisposition, will be even more awakened, and then all you need to do is take your shahada and you're Muslim. So anyways, that's just my advice. Take it with a grain of salt if you want, but I feel what you're going through, because I went through the same thing, and it's just this self-improvement will lead to God, and then if you find God, this will lead to finding actually, okay, now what do I do with this information? If I know that there's God, I need to try to build relationship with God, or I need to try to find out what does God want. How do I do that? Do I look in the Bible? Do I look at the Torah? Do I look at the Quran? Look into those things. And so thank you so much, guys, for checking out this video. Hopefully iamLucid, this reached you, and let me know in the comments below what do you think. And until next time, salam alaikum, and inshallah you'll be guided to the straight path.